13 days before my master's graduation, my brother said, "Skip it, babysit." I said no, so I sent his Hawaii hotel to canceled. Mark, my brother, called me 13 days before college graduation with exciting news. I watched his 3 kids for 4 days while he took his wife to Hawaii for a surprise anniversary. He gave me the dates and said he'd deliver them the night before without asking if I was available. He was informed that I had planned my graduation ceremony and celebration for months on those dates. Mark laughed and offered me a walk during the November ceremony. He said it was just a stage walk and his anniversary was once a year when I told him this was my master's degree ceremony after 7 years of night school while working full-time. He said my education would come later, but Hawaii tickets were non-refundable. I told him I invited 62 people to my graduation, including our Florida grandma who was traveling. Mark called me selfish for putting paper before family. He said his kids needed their aunt more than a silly cap and gown. I refused, and he got angry and said I was his backup plan and told his wife about the trip. He couldn't disappoint her with my attention requirement. He said I was immature to want claps and that real adults didn't need ceremonies to feel accomplished. When I asked why he couldn't find a babysitter, he said he didn't trust strangers with his kids and family should support each other. I felt obligated to him as their aunt, even though he'd always watched his kids for free. Mark did this before my LSAT. I missed my test because he arrived with his kids claiming an emergency. I stayed in the bathroom with his vomiting child at my bachelor's graduation instead of walking. Mark customized every milestone. This time, I planned. Mark could drop off the kids the morning of his flight while I watched them. His excitement made him say this would be great preparation for having kids. Today, Mark dropped off his 3 kids at 8:10 for a 10:05 flight. Telling the kids about my surprise made them happy. After Mark left for the airport, I dressed his kids in their best clothes and told them we were going to an important party. We found all my guests at my graduation site. I promised my nieces and nephew would be special guests at my wedding. 3 kids shouted, "That's our aunt," louder than anyone else when my name was called. I made placards for the front row kids saying, "Our aunt is amazing and first in the family to get a master's." The auditorium laughed and applauded. My 9-year-old niece Lily took photos with my phone as the 6-year-old twins threw flower petals I gave them. After graduation, we went to a restaurant. College coloring books, graduation hats to paint, and umbrella mocktails were in my kids' booth. Children said their aunt was the brightest in the world and worked hard for this degree. They learned and sang the graduation song in the car. My grandma gave them sweet certificates and honorary degrees. Everyone gave the kids the time of their lives like VIPs at an adult party. Mark and his wife came to Hawaii to find their hotel canceled. Since the kids graduating with me were an emergency, I canceled their reservation with Mark's credit card. A last-minute motel change cost twice. Mark called angry, screaming that I was a crazy who'd ruined his marriage and would beat me when he returned. After talking to Mark, I mute my phone and watched the texts fill the screen. Lily showed her ceremony photos to our friends at the kids' table. 3 times, chocolate-frosted twins visited the dessert table. Grandmother Eleanor boasted to everyone at the head table with my degree next to her plate. My best work friend pushed me to the dance floor where a group was dancing to the restaurant's music. Even though my phone buzzed in my pocket every few seconds, I was too busy celebrating to look at it. We danced with the kids and Lucas taught everyone floss while his sisters laughed. While trying to twirl like a ballerina, Ava's earnest look distracted me from my phone's vibrations. I was congratulated by the restaurant manager, who said the kids had told him at least 7 times that their aunt was the brightest. My grandmother danced with me, slower than everyone else but refusing to sit. She said my celebration was well-deserved. I checked my phone after another ding to find 19 more angry Mark texts. Read the first few where he called me selfish and manipulative, then put it away. The kids smiled during the 3-hour celebration, unaware that their father was screaming 2,400 miles away. The restaurant closed at 10 o'clock and everyone went home. As I loaded their birthday goodies and leftover cake into my van, the kids talked about their favorite parts. 5 voicemails appeared when I checked my phone at a red light after it stopped vibrating. My kids were relaxed with a movie at my apartment before I closed my bedroom door. I had to keep the first voicemail away from my ear because Mark yelled. He called me every name he could think of, sounding hysterical as he described the hotel cancellation. He threatened to tell my family the worst about me in the second message. On the third message, he became mean and threatened to make me regret my choice. Mark listed every dollar the hotel cancellation cost him in the fourth message and demanded payment immediately. In the sixth message, he listed all my failures, including childhood mistakes I'd forgotten. Mark's final message was the scariest. He'd deal with me when he returned and I should watch myself. In case I needed proof of his threats, I saved his voicemails and screenshotted his texts. I returned to find the kids watching a movie and didn't notice my shaking hands. Grandmother Eleanor called 9:30 to say goodnight before going to her hotel. I shielded the kids from our conversation on my apartment balcony. She asked how I was, and I said Mark's texts were intense. She spoke up after a long silence. Her voice quieted as she revealed that Mark had always done similar antics, expecting others to change their plans for him. Mark asked her to delay her retirement party 12 years ago because he was fishing that weekend. My grandma changed the date, so half her friends couldn't attend. Mark's request to start my aunt's wedding 2 hours early for his son's baseball game was big. After my aunt declined, Mark arrived late and made a grand entrance that distracted the bride. Grandmother Eleanor trembled as she said she was proud of my final fight against him. She admitted she'd been too kind to Mark as a child, giving in to his tantrums. She said he needed to learn that his schedule and wishes weren't everything. I cried when she said she was glad I had the courage to do what she should have done years ago. Mark's actions and family effects were discussed for 25 more minutes. She advised me not to let him shame me into apologizing before hanging up. I grabbed my phone out of habit when my alarm went off at 6:30 the next morning. Family group chat has 58 notifications. I checked Mark's long 1:12 a.m. message to see where it started. Hawaii time. His detailed statement claimed I promised to monitor his kids at my flat and then ruined his marriage by canceling his hotel reservation in anger. I was jealous of his happy marriage and tried to ruin his anniversary vacation, he said. My mom begged me to call her, my dad asked what happened, and my aunt defended Mark in the texts that followed. My aunt wrote 3 paragraphs about how I should have rescheduled my graduation for November like Mark suggested and that family should always come first. I disappointed 2 uncles. My cousin left a question mark. I read the notes on my bed while the kids slept in the living room. Mark played the victim, making me look like a bitter sibling who couldn't be ignored. Many family members supported him without asking me. My mom's message was hardest to read because she seemed worried I'd done something wrong. Before uploading, I wrote a 15-minute response in notes. I addressed the family discussion calmly and objectively. Mark learned I would watch the kids and never miss. My ceremony. 3 photos of Lily, Ava and Lucas in the first row with placards, flower petals, and my diploma are included. My kids enjoyed my graduation as special guests. I then uploaded a screenshot of Mark's initial text message demanding I skip graduation and walk across the stage. He said grown-ups don't need ceremonies and I was immature for wanting claps. The last screenshot showed him saying his Hawaii tickets were non-refundable, delaying my schooling. I sent and saw the chat message. Nothing happened for 30 minutes. The chat said 18 people saw my post, but no one responded. They might read Mark's text in his own words to see how he spoke to me. My phone was silent until the kids asked about breakfast. I made pancakes while checking the group chat every few minutes, but it was quiet. Mark's angry letters paled in comparison to silence. I got a private message from my cousin Emily while washing breakfast dishes. After years of waiting, she was glad I called out Mark's manipulation. I'd never heard her engagement celebration story from 4 years ago. Mark asked her to watch his kids 3 days before the party because his regular sitter had. Even though Emily couldn't miss her engagement party, Mark insisted that family helps. She left her party early to pick up his kids, skipping speeches and cake cutting. She later learned Mark's regular sitter hadn't. He declined weekend childcare. Emily wrote that 6 family members had similar stories but didn't confront him. Mark requested urgent support, so she found relatives who missed important events or changed their lives. Uncle missed daughter's school play. Another relative skipped a job interview. My aunt vacationed. Everyone accepted Mark as Mark for years. Emily said she was proud of my opposition and hoped it would inspire others to set limits. My screenshots showed many people how Mark handled family, she said. I answered a stranger's call at 1 o'clock, believing it was a restaurant employee about yesterday's celebration. Instead, a man yelled that I ruined his best friend's marriage. Mark's college friend, whom I'd met twice at family events, was hard to recognize. He claimed Allison was threatening divorce over the Hawaii fiasco and it was my fault. He said Mark was a good man who asked his sister for a favor and I ruined his anniversary vacation. After he finished his speech, I quietly asked if he saw Mark's texts. He said it didn't matter because families help. I asked him if he would skip graduation for someone else's vacation. He paused before saying that differed. He grumbled about Mark paying for the vacation when I asked how it was different. After 7 years of night school while working full-time, I invited 62 people to my graduation. I repeated my question about skipping his masters to babysit others' kids. When he went silent, he complained I was twisting things and hung up without saying goodbye. I held the phone in my kitchen and felt oddly pleased that Mark's best friend couldn't explain his actions. The kids were playing in my living room when my phone rang again. On Mark's third day, Allison's name made me queasy. I replied from the balcony expecting her to scream like Mark. Her voice was quiet and cautious. She asked if Mark told me to skip my masters to babysit. I confirmed and offered to email her the text. She said yes, so I told her while she waited. It sounded like a hotel lobby or restaurant. 45 seconds passed silently after I sent the emails. She then quietly asked if the kids enjoyed it. The question shocked me so much I almost didn't answer. I told her they had fun and cheered loudest in the auditorium. When she asked what else the party did, I explained the kids' table with coloring pages and mocktails. Allison asked if I made the signs to hold after another long wait. I said I did and that everyone at the ceremony liked seeing 3 tiny kids so excited about their aunt graduating. Her voice lowered as she requested images. I showed her photos of kids throwing petals and holding placards. Allison began sobbing silently on the phone. She said Mark promised to watch the kids in my apartment but didn't mention graduation. She apologized, said she didn't know, and said she wouldn't have gone on the trip. I told her the kids had fun. She thought it was wrong because she made me choose between school and family. Her voice grew and tears stopped as wrath replaced remorse. Mark told her I'd volunteer to take the kids and help with their anniversary vacation. He acted like I was helping them, not sacrificing my milestone. I told Allison about the hotel cancellation and that Mark gave me his kid emergency credit card. I considered his children's aunt's graduation an emergency worth the cost. She laughed bitterly and couldn't argue with that logic. After hanging up, she said she needed to talk to Mark. I waited on my balcony to see how that talk went. Allison called after 75 minutes, shaking with anger instead of tears. She said Mark had been complaining for months about how I never helped with the kids and prioritized school. He convinced her I was selfish and uncaring about family. Why would her husband lie about his sister? She realized how often Mark had manipulated situations to make me look bad as she listened to their conversations. He told her I'd canceled babysitting at the last minute when he asked during finals week or when I was working. Despite my refusal, he booked the kids' birthday parties during my class periods and wouldn't postpone them. Allison trembled as she recounted Mark's lies to make me sound like a mean aunt who didn't care about family. She said she judged me solely on his account and never considered my selfishness. She realized Mark was lying to avoid asking why I couldn't provide last-minute childcare. She apologized again and said she needed time to consider her marriage. I apologized for her situation because I didn't know what to say. She denied apologetic merit. Hanging up with Allison felt like the ground moved. I saw Mark's parents' number on my phone when a call came in. Since I knew what was coming, I let it ring 3 times before answering. Before I could greet Mark, his mom demanded that I apologize and pay for his hotel stay. She called my unauthorized credit card use theft. After her rant, I gently told her Mark gave me the kid emergency card. After he tried to make me miss his aunt's graduation, his kids went. An emergency, in my book. After she started arguing, I told her I had to check on the kids and left before she felt guilty. I placed the phone on the kitchen counter with shaky hands and realized I'd been holding my breath most of the time. Brooke arrived 18 minutes later with 2 bottles of wine and a bag of takeout. She pushed past me into the flat after seeing my expression and went to my kitchen for wine glasses. She poured us a lot and made me sit at the table and start the story. My story included Mark's request to skip graduation, the hotel cancellation, and Allison's calls. Brooke gaped at me at the end. She dropped her wine glass and called me her hero for finally resisting Mark's manipulation after years. She recalled all the times I'd met his needs. Like when I canceled my birthday dinner because he needed a babysitter or worked from home for a week when his kids had chickenpox. Brooke said seeing those 3 kids celebrate my graduation was the right response to Mark's years of disregarding my achievements. She raised her glass to honor my self-prioritization. My shoulders relaxed as we clinked glasses. My phone rang again 3 days later while the kids were making a blanket fort in the living room. Mark had reached my mom, so seeing her number made me sick. She immediately said I should have been bigger and delayed my graduation for November as Mark advised. Her dissatisfied voice always made me feel like I was 9 again and did something wrong. I told them I got my master's after 7 years of night school while working full-time, and that 62 people, including her mother from Florida, watched me walk. My mom interrupted me to say family always comes first. Now my selfishness was ruining Mark's marriage. She said Allison threatened to leave him and take the kids over my petty ceremonial concerns. Her words raised my blood pressure, and I had to hold the phone to avoid throwing it across the room. I took 4 deep breaths before answering to avoid yelling at my mom that Mark's marriage problems weren't my fault. As calmly as possible, I asked her how many life events she wanted me to sacrifice before prioritizing myself. I told her Mark had ruined my bachelor's graduation and LSAT, and this was my time after years of hard work. My mother went silent and changed her breathing. In a low voice, she said she'd call me later to consider what I said. In this family conflict with my dad, I knew she'd discuss sides. After we wrapped up, I sat on my sofa staring at the wall while the kids played happily in their fort, unaware that their parents' marriage was crumbling in Hawaii. Grandmother Eleanor called from her hotel again that night. She advised me not to let my mother shame me for graduating. She revealed something new. She said my parents always excused Mark because he was the oldest and had different expectations. Eleanor said Mark would throw huge tantrums as a child to get his way. Mama gave in, rather than endure the yelling. She said she knew it from her parenting mistakes with my mom and was sorry I'd suffered so long. Eleanor said my grandfather would have been proud of my self-defense. She cried as she said she wished she had stopped this when Mark was young instead of seeing him manipulate everyone. Her words meant everything, so I thanked her. I felt understood by at least one family member after hanging up. After 3 more days with me, the kids still talked about graduation like it was their best day. Cutting graduation hats from construction paper and glitter and writing my name on stickers decorated diplomas were their college projects. Lucas and Ava practiced graduation with their toy animals by walking across the coffee table while cheering and throwing petals. Lily really wanted to attend my doctoral graduation to throw more petals. I told them I was done with school and wouldn't graduate. I was thrilled that she thought I was smart enough to be a doctor. She looked upset but smiled and suggested I throw flower petals for her graduation. I promised to attend her graduation. Her grip was too tight to breathe. I was texted by Daniel, my restaurant graduation coordinator. He said the party was great and asked if I was okay after hearing me on the phone with an upset person yesterday. My brother tried to make me miss my graduation to babysit, but I took his kids. I replied with the basics via text. Daniel was shocked that my brother would try to make me miss my master's graduation after 7 years of night school. Coworkers understood how hard I worked for that degree, and how much it meant to me. When he offered to be a character witness to prove I wasn't a selfish monster, I laughed for the first time in hours. I thanked him and said I might accept if my family kept acting like I did something wrong. Allison called me again on the 3rd day of Mark and Allison's Hawaii vacation with a new voice. She accused Mark of lying about my availability and requesting that I skip graduation to babysit. Then claimed he initially disputed everything and suggested I was exaggerating, but then showed him my text conversations with screenshots of his original chat. Mark eventually confessed, but he fought, saying my graduation wasn't as important as their marriage, and I should have understood. Allison said their tension had ruined their vacation and made them hardly talk in their hotel room. She sounded exhausted and heartbroken as she described how Mark kept trying to persuade her without apologizing for what he'd done to me. Even though it wasn't my fault, I felt terrible that their marriage was suffering and didn't know what to say. Allison started asking about times Mark ruined my big life events. I told her about the LSAT incident when he claimed an emergency and I missed my test date and had to wait months to reschedule. I stayed in the bathroom with his vomiting toddler at my bachelor's graduation instead of walking across the stage. As I gave example after example, Allison was surprised and said she didn't know the pattern was so widespread and long-standing. She realized her spouse had a serious problem with respecting others' limits and putting himself first. She said she didn't know what this meant for their marriage, but now she realized. I felt terrible for her as she learned hard truths about her husband and children's father. Later that night my dad called, and I planned another family unity talk. He said Mark and I made decisions that worsened the issue, but was neutral. After Mark returned from Hawaii, he suggested we sit down and talk like adults to resolve this as a family. I liked that he didn't automatically support Mark like my mom, but I was upset that he was treating this like a two-sided issue when the facts were clear. Mark forced me to sacrifice important moments for his convenience for a decade. Finally, I declined. I told my dad I'd talk but wouldn't apologize for graduating. Fair enough, he said. After we hung up, I realized my dad was trying to be diplomatic, but he wasn't demanding I make amends with Mark like everyone else. The family lunch conversation heated up the next day. My aunt wrote a lengthy letter about family being eternal and forgiving and uniting in times of trouble. She suggested we sit down to resolve family issues after Mark returned from Hawaii. My phone held the message for almost 3 minutes. For Mark to feel better about what he did, my cousin suggested he apologize before everyone arrived. Her message got 4 thumbs up instantly. Up to 8 relatives gave thumbs up. No one answered my aunt's unity message. I put my phone away and focused on the kids today. That night I ordered pizza from the place the kids always picked. Twins fought over the last breadstick at my paper plate kitchen table. Lucas stopped and looked at me intently. He wondered why his dad was so angry over the phone yesterday. He said he heard his mother crying in the bathroom after talking. My stomach dropped, but I spoke normally. I told him adults argue, but everything is fine. He nodded and returned to his pizza, but I could tell he was still thinking. I tried to ignore what these kids were learning for the rest of supper. Instead of worrying about their parents fighting in Hawaii, they should have had fun at their aunt's. Lily joined me in cleaning up after dinner. Her expression suggested she would say something important. She truly desired college like me. She wondered if her dad would try to keep her from graduating. The question prompted me to grab the counter. This 9-year-old knew her father's routine. She linked his attempt to disrupt my graduation to her future. I kneeled at her level and promised to attend her graduation no matter what. She could be anything and celebrate her successes without interference, I told her. She hugged me and thanked me. This tiny kid shouldn't worry about this, so I held her and tried not to cry. Next morning, Mark texted me. From Hawaii, he and Allison returned early. They cut their vacation a day because tension prevented it. Mark wanted to talk before picking up his kids. During reading, my stomach dropped. Since his airport call 4 days ago, this conflict had escalated. I anticipated trouble. I told him to pick up the kids, but we wouldn't talk until he calmed down. I reminded him of his last voicemail threat to beat me. He replied after a few minutes. Angry, he called me dramatic. He promised to treat the kids civilly. I didn't believe him, but I had written proof of his calmness. A neighbor knocked at my door at 2:40. She looked worried and said a man was driving outside my building. He'd viewed the windows for 18 minutes. I thanked her and viewed my front window. Mark owned a car across the street and drove. He planned what to say to me. My hands trembled. Calling Brooke on my phone. She was asked to delay Mark's arrival. We'll be there in 11 minutes, and asked to bring her boyfriend. Without thinking, I agreed. I knew Mark wouldn't act with her big rugby-playing boyfriend there. With witnesses, I didn't fear Mark would hurt me, but I wanted him to know I was supported. Brooke and her boyfriend arrived 11 minutes later. A knock at my door. Followed their brief sit-down. I saw Mark through the peephole. His face was red and exhausted from sunburn. He barely looked at me before asking where his kids were when I opened the door. When they heard him, the kids fled the bedroom. He excited them and they talked about graduation over each other. On my phone, Lily showed him her photo. Mark's jaw tightened as he scrolled through photos of his kids holding signs about their amazing aunt. His face reddened with each photo. Children ran to get their belongings from the bedroom. Mark turned to me and said we were talking. I was expected to reconcile with his wife. To his face, I said I had nothing to fix. I guarded and entertained his kids. His lies ruined his marriage. Though my heart was racing, I kept my cool. Mark blushed and spoke harshly. Brooke's boyfriend rose from the couch. He didn't speak or threaten. Just standing. Mark reconsidered his words after seeing him. Get in the car, his kids. Little Lily carried the stuffed animal I bought while the twins ran with backpacks. Mark stopped at the door. The family would learn about me, he said over his shoulder. He said I'd regret choosing paper over family. He left with kids. Against the door, closed. Weak legs. Though less than 4 minutes, it felt like hours. I slid to the floor, knees to chest. Brooke clutched my shoulders next to me. I cried non-stop. Not the shocking breakdown I expected. I cried quietly, exhausted, and couldn't breathe. Brooke initially remained silent. She let me cry in her arms. Her boyfriend waited near the door and whispered to wait in the car for privacy. After he left, Brooke pulled me close and said I did nothing wrong. She said Mark's anger was realizing he couldn't control me. After years of making me feel guilty for living my life, she said he was losing power. I told her I was stupid for crying and wiped my face on my sleeve. She said I wasn't dumb. She said family was harder to fight than strangers because they knew what to push. We sat on the floor for 18 more minutes as I calmed down. Brooke made me drink water and reminded me that Mark paid double for a hotel while I walked at graduation with 3 kids cheering. They won despite his yelling, she said. The next day, my phone was quiet. No angry Mark texts, wife voicemails, or family group chats. It felt odd after 4 days of notifications. Allison texted me at 1 p.m. She asked Mark for coffee without telling him. I contemplated the message. I didn't expect her to reply without Mark. I said I could meet her. A cafe halfway between us was our next afternoon spot. I wondered what she would say all day. Some part of me feared traps. Maybe Mark sent her to yell at me in person. I hoped she wanted to hear my side, not guilt me about their marriage issues. Ordered coffee 12 minutes early at the cafe. I sat at a door-facing corner table. Exhausted, Allison arrived on time. Her ponytail was messy and her eyes were bagged. She ordered tea and sat across from me without looking. Her hand surrounded her cup as she stared. She looked at me and said she hadn't slept. She remembered Mark exploiting situations. Shut up and let her speak. I didn't recognize her examples. She said Mark told her parents she was too busy for visits because he didn't want to drive. Even though he never called a babysitter, he told her friends it failed. He told her sister the kids were sick and couldn't attend her birthday, but he wanted to watch football. The pattern was everywhere she looked. Allison put her cup down and faced me. She said Mark had portrayed me as the selfish sister who rejected family help for years. She trusted him because she had no reason to doubt. She apologized for judging me without facts. Her apology was sarcastic. She allegedly gave Mark an ultimatum. She took the kids to her parents, or he started marriage counseling. She claimed Will. Her kids wouldn't learn to lie and manipulate for what they want. I appreciated her apology, but she didn't need to apologize for believing her husband. Head shaking, she said she should have asked more questions. Her reason for ignoring signs was convenience. That was her husband and children's father, so I spoke carefully. Mark's disruption of my milestones was detailed. His fake emergency caused me to miss my LSAT, I told her. I told her about spending my bachelor's graduation in the bathroom with his sick kid while everyone else walked. I told her about all the times he expected me to drop everything for him and made me feel guilty for declining. Each story upset Allison more. She realized his behavior wasn't about me. Putting himself first was his habit. She excused him, thinking he was stressed or overwhelmed, because she loved him. But now she knew it was deeper. Talked for 3 hours. More tea for Allison, more coffee for me. She claimed Mark's parents always pardoned him and demanded compliance. She said his mother called her yesterday to forgive him and stop worrying about one vacation. This phone call made her realize the problem went beyond Mark. The whole family taught him to expect favors. She said his mother told her Mark was sensitive and needed support like a child, not a grown man with 3 kids. That conversation opened her eyes most, Allison said. She saw how Mark learned and accepted this behavior. Allison invited me to family therapy with Mark before we left. Professionals should hear both sides, she said. I didn't want to get involved in their marriage stuff. Her hand touched mine across the table. She suggested someone else evaluate Mark's behavior besides her. He should hear from a manipulated person outside their marriage, she said. Time to think. Part of me wanted to reject them and avoid their mess. But part of me knew Allison needed help fixing things. I agreed to one session but stressed that I was supporting her, not reconciling with Mark. I declined family mediation where both sides take equal blame. She nodded, understanding. She said the therapist would focus on Mark's behavior, not my excuses. Allison hugged me before leaving the cafe. She said she was glad I stood up for myself because it revealed things she ignored. She thought Mark's reaction to being rejected showed he expected everyone to comply. Despite the discomfort, she appreciated my honesty. Nighttime call from Mom. Her voice had changed since we spoke. She sounded worried, not mad. Saying she told my dad and grandmother everything. She realized she'd been defending Mark too long. She regretted not supporting me sooner. She said she should have seen the pattern years ago instead of telling me to be flexible. I wasn't sure if this was real or if she'd change her mind tomorrow, so I didn't say anything. She kept talking about how she put Mark's comfort before mine. She said her grandmother showed her the damage. My mom lowered her voice. She always caved to Mark's tantrums when he was younger. She said she avoided his meltdowns by taking the easiest route. So she realized she taught him to expect everyone to accommodate him. She apologized for her parenting mistakes and that he turned out this way. She praised me for setting boundaries despite family strife. She promised to support my Mark relationship. She stopped pressuring me to reconcile or accommodate him. I thanked her for her apology. Changes were discussed for 35 minutes more. She said she'd treat us equally, not compromise. After hanging up, I felt lighter than days. 9 days before therapy. I worked most of that time, trying not to think about sitting with Mark while a stranger analyzed our family issues. I changed my outfit 3 times the morning of the session because nothing felt right for confronting your brother's manipulation with professional help. Even though my stomach was flipping, I wore jeans and a sweater to look calm. The downtown therapist's waiting room had uncomfortable chairs that made you sit straight. Mark and Allison were there. Mark crossed his arms and ignored me. His jaw indicated fight readiness. Allison looked exhausted but focused, like she'd prepared all week. Her smile and thanks were small. Sitting across from them, I grabbed an unread magazine. Therapist called after 12 minutes. I felt tense entering her office with soft lighting and plants, despite its intended relaxation. A notepad holding 60-year-old woman with kind eyes. Introduced herself and explained session strategy. Everyone could speak freely. The pattern she noticed was disgust. Mark shifted, wanting to leave. "Why were we there?" asked the therapist. Mark jumped in first without waiting. He said I betrayed him by canceling his hotel and ruining his anniversary. I turned his request for family help into a revenge plot. He shouted about the last-minute hotel price and how Allison barely spoke to him the whole trip. I caused his marriage problems by holding grudges over nothing, he said. The therapist took notes without speaking. After Mark finished, she asked why he expected me to miss graduation. Mark struggled to speak. He said he delayed it until November. His therapist asked if he understood scheduled ceremonies. Mark said, "Yeah, but family emergencies come first," she inquired. Mark told Allison he booked the trip. Therapist looked at me while writing. "Take a breath and restart." Mark came with his kids claiming an emergency. But he wanted to go to a concert, so I missed the LSAT. He brought his sick kids to my bachelor's graduation, so I spent the ceremony in the bathroom instead of walking across the stage. I said this master's degree required 7 years of night school while working. Mark called 13 days before graduation to ask me to skip it for Hawaii. My hands shook but my voice was calm. Mark turned red as I listed each example. A therapist asked Mark about these events. He replied, "Yeah, but those were different situations." His response was unclear. He requested assistance only when needed. A therapist asked if seeking help meant others had to miss important events. She asked Mark. "Family helps each other." Mark fell silent. Then Allison spoke. Her anger was audible in her steady voice. Mark manipulated their marriage, she told the therapist. He told her parents she was too busy to visit when he didn't want to drive. He canceled her friends' plans after never calling a babysitter. He lied about our conversations to convince her I was selfish and never helped with the kids. Allison said she discovered he'd label me the problem sister for years. Mark interrupted, but the therapist raised her hand. "Listen to his actions' effects," she advised. As Mark closed his mouth, his leg jumped in frustration. Allison persisted. She said Mark's mom said he was sensitive and needed extra support after Hawaii. That conversation revealed Mark always expected special treatment. Seeing his reaction to my refusal revealed a marriage pattern she'd ignored. Therapist asked Mark what he heard. Mark said everyone wanted him. My therapist denied that request. She asked again what his wife and sister said about his behavior. Long silence from Mark. He concluded that they thought he was selfish. The therapist said their thoughts weren't important. It required recognizing his habits. Mark put his needs and schedule before others' time and accomplishments in every example we shared, she said. This violated autonomy, she said. Mark believes families should help. The therapist agreed but advised respecting the other's refusal. It wasn't a help request, she said. That required compliance and guilt when he didn't win. Mark showed several expressions: anger, denial, confusion. The therapist asked if his pattern hurt relationships. Mark guessed defensively. The session lasted 35 more minutes. The therapist asked Mark why he demanded others' time. His family obligations were unclear. Always resisting, she made him consider the consequences of his demands. By the end, Mark looked exhausted. Without confessing or apologizing, he agreed to individual therapy. He must change this pattern or risk his marriage and family, the therapist warned. She stated it clearly. I noticed Mark's expression change. Perhaps not acceptance, but the first sign that this was real and had consequences. We left office quietly. Allison tapped my arm and thanked me for coming. Adds, having concrete examples from outside their marriage helped the therapist see the full picture. I saw Mark walk silently to his car. Like someone popped his confidence balloon, he looked less angry and more deflated. I went home exhausted but relieved. Despite not fixing anything, the session began. Dad called 3 weeks later to suggest a family dinner. Just him, Mom, Mark and me. We must clear the air and move forward, he said. Refused departure. I felt sick thinking about sitting across from Mark at a restaurant and pretending everything was fine, but avoiding him forever was impossible. We were family whether I liked it or not. I agreed, but made my dad promise a public meeting. I wasn't at a house where emotions could explode without witnesses. Halfway between my apartment and my parents' house, we chose a chain restaurant with laminated menus and 3 bright lights. Arriving first, I got a back corner table. My parents arrived 6 minutes later. While hugging me, Mom whispered, "I'm proud." Dad squeezed my shoulder. In a button-down shirt, Mark finished last, looking uncomfortable. He entered the booth across from me and stared at the menu like it was the most interesting thing ever. We discussed work and weather while ordering drinks and appetizers. No one mentioned Hawaii, graduation or therapy. Finally, my dad cleared his throat and indicated we should discuss what happened. Mark placed his menu. His first look since sitting was at me. He apologized for making me miss graduation. His voice was stiff like a script reader. Apologies for threatening voicemails. He said work and trip planning were stressful. My jaw tensed. Excuses accompanied his apology. I accepted his apology but demanded change. I quit as his childcare backup. He had to politely ask for my help and accept rejection. Mark nodded but didn't speak. My dad spoke up. After considering our family patterns, he realized Mark had expected special treatment for years. It must end, he said. Mark opened his eyes. He expected our parents' support again. My dad persisted. He said Mark was an adult with a family and needed to respect others' schedules and boundaries. Mom apologized for allowing Mark's behavior. She said making excuses for him since childhood was unfair to me. She promised equality in the future. He appeared shocked. Without speaking, he opened and closed his mouth. He was processing that our parents wouldn't defend him. The rest of dinner was awkward but productive. The rules are basic. Mark asked for help 14 weeks in advance. Free from guilt or manipulation, I refused. Our parents would be impartial and not force me to accommodate him. Mark accepted everything but looked surprised. Leaving the restaurant made me lighter. No miracle dinner. Although Mark rationalized and blamed others, it was progress. I had parental support. It wasn't perfect, but Mark apologized. Thus we had clear boundaries instead of my implicit promise to always comply. 2 weeks later, Mark texted me, making me think. He scheduled a date night with Allison in 14 weeks and asked me to watch the kids. No telling, no demanding, just please. He told me to let him know if I was busy. My brother used complete sentences and acknowledged my schedule, so I stared at my phone to understand. I texted back I could and thanked you for asking early. A thumbs up. No debt or guilt. Nobody preached family duties. Just thanks and date. This was typical sibling behavior. I felt weird about feeling weird. A few days later, grandmother called proudly. She told relatives I started something. My cousin told Mark she stopped last-minute babysitting and needed 9 days' notice. My aunt said she couldn't change her plans for him. The graduation was announced by Allison, and his father-in-law lectured Mark on respecting others' time. Grandmother said Mark was learning the hard way that he couldn't force everyone to support him. She seemed proud I started a minor uprising. I just wanted to walk at my own graduation without drama. She says, sometimes one person standing up makes others realize they can too. People were talking about Mark's family grapevine stunts, and they went along to keep the peace. Work took my mind off family. The boss called me into her office to congratulate me on my master's. She invited me to apply for a 4-month management position. I would manage a small team and get a big raise. My commitment to finishing school while working full-time was valued, she said. Mark would never understand how I felt validated leaving her office. He made me feel selfish for years of schooling. Education opened doors he'd never have. After work shifts, I studied all nights. I wrote papers on weekends instead of relaxing. They saw tangible results without ceremonies or paperwork. My apartment received Lily's return address package. Her school graduation ceremony drawing was inside. Although only I wore a cap and gown, she drew us all. The stick figures smiled big and she wrote, "My aunt is the smartest," in crayon at the top. The 9-year-old focused. She cared because she saw my hard work and success. A simple black frame sits next to my diploma on my desk. I remembered why standing up to Mark was right every time I saw it. I and his kids watched and learned to respect others' goals. Allison texted me 6 weeks after graduation to invite me to the kids' play. Mark would be there, but they were doing family things, and the kids wanted me to see their performance. I agreed because I wouldn't punish the kids for their father's behavior. Parents with recording phones filled the elementary school auditorium. We sat next to Allison after seeing her. On her other side, Mark looked awkward in a button-down. He nodded as I sat. I nodded. We stayed silent. Kids in homemade costumes entered the stage as the lights dimmed. Lily took her forest scene tree role seriously. Rabbit twins waved to us in the audience. We waited in the lobby as kids ran around with juice boxes and cookies after the show. We felt stiff, like we were trying too hard to be normal. But the kids loved seeing their aunt and parents. That mattered. Mark cleared his throat and approached me as we left. "Thanks for coming." He said his therapist was helping him understand why he always put himself first. After doing it all your life, he said it was hard to spot the pattern. Though still struggling, he was becoming more aware. Though change would be slow, I appreciated the honesty. He seemed more self-aware than ever. I commended his effort. After another awkward moment, his kids ran up and demanded he race to the car. After waving, he left. Allison said, "Thank you," squeezed my arm, and followed her family. That night, I browsed vacation packages on my couch with my laptop. I set aside money for Mark's emergencies that would require me to drop everything for years. Last-minute flight money if he claimed urgency. Taking unpaid leave to help him would pay my bills. He waited to use that money. I realized I didn't need it. I didn't back him. Switched accounts and checked beach resorts. Brooke squealed when I announced our graduation trip by phone. We celebrated my master's degree, 7 years of night school, and learning to prioritize myself without family or guilt. After 9 days in Mexico, I felt lighter than months. 9 weeks after graduation, routines were almost normal. Mark sometimes overreached. He'd ask for favors or guilt me about family obligations in days. He retreated instead of manipulating when I declined. Therapy helped despite slow progress. Allison seemed happier when we spoke. She said marriage counseling was improving communication and teaching Mark to consider her feelings before actions. Her expectations were reasonable. She knew his transformation would take time. Small wins were better than none. My boss called me into her office 5 weeks after our promotion discussion. Spreading paperwork on her desk, she smiled. Upon request, management was mine. Pay raise, small team, more responsibility, flexible schedule. Just then, I signed the offer letter. That night, I told my parents and grandmother to clear their weekends for dinner. My reward. We met at a nice downtown restaurant. Mom hugged me and spoke highly of me. She regretted not supporting me sooner instead of always accommodating Mark. Dad raised a glass to my success. Grandmother winked across the table and predicted my success. My promotion confirmed my late-night studying and sacrifices. I always valued education over Mark's ease. He'd long ignored my degree for his needs. That degree boosted my career in ways he couldn't understand. 11 months after graduation, Mark's anniversary returned. My phone rang Tuesday afternoon as I organized files at my new desk. As his name appeared on the screen, I prepared. He spoke more calmly and tentatively when I replied. He requested time to talk. I accepted and awaited manipulation. With Allison, he wanted to celebrate their anniversary at a 90-minute bed and breakfast over the weekend. He called 14 weeks in advance to ask me to watch the kids that weekend. No coercion or assumption. Even though I was free, I checked my calendar when asked. Weekends worked for me. When I agreed, he seemed relieved. He said he appreciated it, knowing I was busy with my new job. After we hung up, I stared at my phone. Mark respectfully asked for my first adult help. Therapy worked. Maybe not completely, but enough to make him realize when to switch tactics. Mark dropped off the kids Friday night with their bags and a weekend meal and activity plan. He listed their pediatrician and emergency contacts. Allison hugged and thanked me before leaving. The kids rushed into my apartment to see their aunt. Lily told me about her school project on famous scientists over homemade pizza. Since the twins disagreed on a movie, I let them vote democratically. No one mentioned parental conflict. Nobody seemed anxious or worried. Like other kids, they slept over at their aunt's. The Park Science Museum was our Saturday destination. Lucas gathered rocks and Ava befriended every dog. Lily wanted an office job and asked about mine. Playing board games, eating ice cream, and watching cartoons late. Kids helped me flip pancakes Sunday morning. We were exhausted but happy when Mark and Allison picked them up after crafts and reading. Allison took me aside while Mark loaded the kids into the car. Not in years had she looked so calm. Their weekend away was perfect, she said. They reunited without kids or stress. Her next statement shocked me. She said Mark tried hard. Counseling taught him that others' schedules and feelings mattered. He sometimes performed old habits. He sometimes put himself first. When she called him out, he stopped and thought instead of defending himself. She said progress was slow, but real. He learned to consider others' feelings before making decisions. She squeezed my hand and thanked me for opposing him at graduation. Their family's wake-up call, she said. I was leaving the grocery store with 2 bags 8 months after graduating when someone called my name. I turned and saw a Mark-aged man approaching. Him being the college friend who called to yell at me about ruining Mark's marriage took me a second to recognize. My stomach sank. His discomfort was evident from a few feet away. He wanted an apology. He heard Mark's side and called me without details. Mark discussed therapy and manipulation, he said. He realized that he'd seen Mark do similar things with other friends over the years, making plans and then changing them last minute, expecting people to drop everything to help him and getting angry when they declined. He had dismissed it as Mark being Mark, but now he saw it as a problem. He apologized again and asked for forgiveness for jumping to conclusions. I appreciated the apology and was glad Mark was improving. I walked to my car feeling lighter than in months after saying goodbye. I was best engaged by my new job. My promotion gave me interesting projects and a team that valued my input. I owned my windowed office. I could schedule well. Studying until midnight stopped. I had time for friends, hobbies, and me. I noticed something while reviewing a report one afternoon. Defying Mark kept my graduation. It caused a chain reaction that resolved family issues. Kids saw adults respecting and setting boundaries. They learned to say no, and valued your achievements. Without demanding sacrifice, family support meant supporting each other's milestones. After Mark was honest, Allison felt more confident in her marriage. My parents treated Mark and me equally, not expecting me to accommodate him. Even extended family limited Mark. Sometimes family gatherings were tense. Mark occasionally acted entitled. But now there were consequences. People confronted him. I confronted him guilt-free. I sometimes relived graduation. 3 children shouted, "That's our aunt," as I crossed the stage. Whole auditorium clapping and laughing. Grandmother gave honorary degrees. I finished something I worked 7 years for, and kids were proud. That memory reminded me every day that I'd made the right choice, that I deserved to celebrate my successes without guilt, and that real family support means respecting each other's big moments instead of treating them like inconveniences.